Welcome to Make Today Count, your 60 minutes of fresh conversation served up to inform, educate and inspire your personal brand. I'm your host Ross Dean, and each episode I chat to thought leaders, influencers and experts in their game who all have one thing in common: the desire to go the extra mile, pushing against the status quo to create a richer life for both themselves and those around them. Powered by compassion and driven by the need to leave the world that little bit better than when they arrived. Okay, hi guys, and welcome back to Make Today Count. And today we've got an amazing guest in Zoe Patterson from She Is Coaching. Hey Zoe, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you so much for your time today. We connected recently after I saw some of the posts that you've been posting out on Instagram about kind of this big thing that I think a lot of people have challenges with, whether it's in business, whether it's in just day-to-day life. I know Instagram can be a catalyst for some of this stuff. But it's, today we're talking about what other people think about you and why it's none of your business. And I think that's kind of a nice way of kind of phrasing it from the off. Because,
absolutely.
Because I think that the conversation that we'll have today, hopefully, if you're listening to this and you have just some challenges sometimes with maybe holding yourself back in all areas of your life just because you're worried about what family think or what friends think or complete strangers, that happens as well. So really looking forward to getting to this conversation with you today, Zoe. Before we get into that though, if people haven't come across the work that you do before, can you just give us a bit of background and then a little bit more about the business that you have today?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a confidence and body image coach. So I specifically coach introverted, sensitive women who are ready to feel that deep confidence within themselves and at home in their bodies and alive in their life essentially without changing who they are in the process. And the reason that I'm so called to this, and specifically with introverted women, is because of my own personal journey to self-discovery. So as a child and through like my teens and adulthood, like most women and most people actually, I believed there was something wrong with me because I was quiet, reflective, and I didn't think I looked pretty like my friends or the people on TV. And I spent so much time in my own head validating the beliefs I had that I wasn't interested enough or confident enough or attractive enough to be deserving not only of my own love or anybody else's really. And then coming from quite an extroverted family, I was resentful of being this shy, quiet person because I seemed so different to everybody else. And I would avoid social situations. I would feel so anxious about having to spend time with people that I didn't know very well. So it was all quite a negative experience for me, really. And I was also so self-conscious about how I looked. And probably from I was about 6 years old, I'd been faced with quite a lot of criticism about my appearance and my weight. And there were so many parts of me that I just really wanted to hide that didn't feel good enough in any way. And then this led me down a really unhappy road to body dysmorphia. And I spent so many years just battling my body and dieting, exercising, self-hating every single part of my body because I believed that if I just looked as good as possible, then this would almost make up for what I perceived as my boring personality. And I just really wanted to be like everybody else and be sociable and feel comfortable with who I was, but I just couldn't get there. And I tried so many different things and I tried changing who I was physically and mentally, but none of it ever actually made me happy. And it wasn't until I released this expectation to be this perfect person that I really understood who I was. And I learned to take control of my mind instead of letting it control me. And I started to express myself more openly and honestly and really connect with who I was. And I tried lots of different types of support, such as counseling and CBT and hypnotherapy, which were all absolutely amazing and incredible for helping me, let go of my past. And I would highly recommend them for anyone who has past experiences that they need to work through. But I still wasn't moving forward, and I kind of felt like I was just stuck where I was and I couldn't kind of go into where I knew it could be. And I was just so ready to let go of my past and and look to the future instead. And it was actually when I was trying to find ways to further my career that I came across life coaching. And I'd studied psychology at university and wanted to make use of my degree in my working life. And I was just exploring different avenues when I found some life coaches on social media, on Instagram. And it was all really new to me. I'd never really heard of it before, and I didn't really know what it was. And it was the first time I'd properly looked into what a life coach was. And oh, it just sounded like everything I'd been searching for, both for my career and my own personal development. And I did that typical thing, like what we're going to talk about, like putting it off in case, like, what will people think of me, and is this the right thing, and should I really go for this? And but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And eventually I reached out to a coach, and it's actually a coach I still work with today, and talked to her about what my options would be, both personally and as a career. And from there, I signed up to do my coaching qualification and to do a series with her. And it just honestly changed my life. And it's the reason why I'm so passionate about the power of coaching. You know, I've experienced it both as a client and as a coach, and it's magical. And I just want to help other women who have felt how I did and support them to live the life they want and have the confidence to start loving who they are.
Mm. I think you made a really important point at the start of what you just said there, Zoe, in that I think many people could relate to the fact that sometimes, you know, especially when they're children, they kind of, you know, we don't select the families and the friends that we're around. And sometimes, like you mentioned there, you felt that you were more quiet and more reserved. And I think sometimes if you're around other people that are maybe, like you said, were more kind of outgoing and something, that can be really challenging for someone that at that age, can't it? And I think a lot of people have that situation and immediately think there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a society, we are more geared towards those extroverted people, and we see it in schools, because I'm a teacher as well, and schools are kind of set
Mm.
up as well for the more extroverted children, and those quiet children, we're always trying to draw them out. Oh, come on, share your ideas. And it can be really difficult when you're not that kind of person, and you do start to look quite inward and think, well, why am I different? What is wrong with me? Why am I not like these other people that are more outgoing and more sociable?
Yeah, and you made a good point there as well about speaking about things like Instagram, I think, and for people kind of in either in business or just using it from day to day, you know, a lot of what we see on these channels are people that are extroverted. It seems to be the norm that, you know, everyone's kind of bubbly and, they've just got up and they've gone for a run and they're, all happy and all the time. And we know this isn't probably the case, but that's it. That's what we're kind of seeing every day, isn't it? So it's hard to kind of think, well, you know, is there someone out there like me that's going through the same sort of stuff?
Yeah, and that's it. Social media is very good at kind of masking what people are really, really like. And
Mm,
I've had people say to me, well, you can't be introverted because you go on your stories on Instagram and you share your pictures and you talk and think. Instagram doesn't give you the full picture, but when you're on the outside looking in, it can feel like everybody is different to you and you're the only one that finds that difficult.
mm. And I know that you work with, a range of women in different circumstances. But generally, why do people kind of come to you for your coaching? Is it kind of a host of different things, or particular things that you've noticed?
Yeah, so when women come to me, there's generally lots of different reasons why they may have initially got to that point, but when we go to the core of it, it all kind of comes back to the same thing. So usually when they come to me, they've reached that point where they feel like enough is enough, and they've spent years, if not their
Mm,
whole lives, trying to fit in and be like somebody else. And then when they get in touch with me for coaching, they feel like they're ready to take back that control
mm,
and start loving who they are rather than fighting it. And these women have usually held themselves back from pursuing the careers they want, relationships, and even experiences that many of us maybe take for granted. So, like going on holiday or going to social events. And
mm,
they're so worried about how they come across to people and what other people think of them that they become what we call people pleasers. And
mm,
the main reason that they come to me is they want to stop doing that, and they want to have that confidence to put themselves first and feel worthy of taking up space and achieve the things they've seen other people achieve. And a lot of the time, they are really aware of their behaviors or actions that haven't been serving them well, but they just feel stuck a bit similar to how did they feel stuck, and they're not sure how to move forward. And initially, clients, they almost want me to give them like an instruction manual of how to get from where they are now to where they want to be. And think if they just follow these set steps that I'll give them, they'll get there. But actually, they all have the answers inside, and it's my job to help pull them out rather than tell them what to do. So it's always this confidence and trusting that they know what's best for them and they know themselves well, but it's just kind of getting that connection to that again is generally what they come to me for.
Mm. And generally, where does come of these feelings or these thoughts? Where do they generally come from? Are they just from kind of built up past experiences that someone's had up until that point, or does it tend to be any other particular triggers that you found?
It can be a wide range of things. So for a lot of the women that I've worked with, it is things that maybe have built up over the years, whether they've been like myself, a quiet, shy, reserved person, or they've had experiences at school where they've maybe been bullied or somebody has said something to them, or just their family lives. They've kind of had to always built up this kind of shield and not really been able to show who they really are and hidden who they are. And for some women, it hasn't been. They've just kind of had this conditioning from like what's on the media and in TV that they have to look a certain way, or this diet culture that's all around us. All of these things kind of add up. And so for some people, there will be maybe one defining experience that is made their confidence dip really, really low, and they've held on to that for a really long time. And for other people, it's kind of this almost subconscious conditioning that's been happening over the years that's just built up and built up over time.
And I'm guessing it's a mix of different things that they're having challenges with, because, maybe we'd immediately think of maybe, maybe they aren't pushing themselves in work, or maybe they have a life plan and maybe that wasn't going the way they wanted to. But from what you're saying as well, it can be kind of some of the more simpler things, like just, going to a party, or going to out with friends. There seems to be, from what you're saying, there seems to be a lot of kind of levels to some of this stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For some people, it can take over everything in their lives, and it holds them back in huge ways. And for other people, it's little things. So I've had clients, that will not go to things like even go to the gym because they're so
Mm,
worried about what people will think about them when they get there. Are they going to look silly in front of the other people that are there? They hold themselves back from these little things that so many of us would just see as a normal day-to-day thing.
mm.
So yeah, it shows up in so many different ways, and I think that's why it's so important for these women to really connect to themselves and to really see how it's affecting them. Because, like I said, they come to me usually for this overall thing of I want confidence, but when we kind of peel back the layers a little bit, there's areas actually where they are really confident and they don't recognize that actually you're doing this every day, that you're showing
Yeah.
confidence here and you're not worrying about people think here. But there's other things that they just kind of they're really focused in and think that's what they need to change. So it affects people in so many different ways, from little things to huge things as well.
And I'm guessing as well that, for a lot of these women that you're working with, um, in the moment at that time, they often kind of think perhaps that they're the only person experiencing some of this stuff, and that kind of self-perpetuates in that that then thinks, well, what am I doing wrong? But I'm guessing that, because I know that a lot of the work that you do, you have a group set up, and I'm guessing when they're able to kind of see that it's not just them that's going through some of this stuff, that must be a huge relief as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And time again, when I speak to my clients and we go through, the questions they've answered, and we discuss things, and they say, but I feel like I'm the only one. And when they actually hear from other people and see, that other people on Instagram are commenting on my post and saying, yeah, I'm the same, or, in the group that I've got, if they're sharing experiences, that can be a huge weight off for them to think, actually, no, there's nothing wrong with me. This isn't a bad thing the way that I am. I just need to learn how to deal with it a bit better, or I need to learn how to work this to suit me more.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it can be a huge weight off whenever they find that they are not alone, because you feel like I'm the only person that has these thoughts. And like we've said with Instagram, it masks all those things, in a social media it kind of only shows the highlights and it doesn't show what people are really going through to get to that point. So
Mm.
having that space where people can actually find each other and see that they are not alone is hugely beneficial.
And it sounds like, from what you're saying, there's a lot of people similar, I guess, similar to your own story, whereby you got to a point where you knew the way in which you were thinking maybe wasn't serving you, so you wanted to go and help others and do the life coaching and that kind of thing. I'm guessing it's the same for your clients, in that it gets to a point whereby they've tried everything and they just kind of think, well, how is this serving me? Is that kind of usually the kind of mindset they're in when they come to look to work with you, where they've kind of maybe exhausted other routes and they've just kind of got sick of feeling like the way they do.
Yeah, it kind of gets to that point where they think, right, well, what I'm doing now hasn't got me to where I want to be, so something needs to change.
Mm.
And generally the women that come to me for coaching are looking for that kind of that positive way forward. So with things like counselling and CBT, they are incredible tools, but they are focused more on the past. So the women that come to me are more looking to the future and kind of
Yeah.
how to move away from this now. They're ready to let go and move on and actually start living their life in the present and moving forward. So yeah, they get to that point where they think, right, now is my time. I'm ready to take back control, and I'm ready to take the lead on these things and let go of all the things that have held me back for so long.
Mm. You know, the $1 million question to a lot of this stuff, and it kind of the title of this conversation, and probably people listening to this now will think, you know, yeah, I can really resonate with a lot of that stuff. I'm thinking about this. You know, why are we so consumed? Why are we so worried, do you think, Zoe, about kind of what other people think?
Oh, this is such a good question. I think the main thing is it has become so ingrained in us from such a young age to care about how we come across to other people and fit their standards. And I know I've touched on school already, but as children, you know, we're told to behave in a certain way, and that we're told we're good if we do what adults tell us. And at school, we have rules to follow and
Mm.
assessments to pass. And this all feeds into this need to make other people believe and think that our work and what we're doing is good and worthy. And then right through into our adulthood and our jobs, we need to impress our colleagues or our boss to move up in our careers. And we're always striving to live up to other people's expectations. And as a consequence, we then worry about how we come across and what they think of us. So it's ingrained in us from such a young age that it's really important that people think well of us. And it's also splashed all over the media, whether it's magazines and TV programs and social media, because we get validation from how many likes
Mm.
our post gets. And it's this kind of competition of, how many likes did that post get? What do I need to change now to get more likes this time? And there are TV shows and magazines just dedicated to picking apart how people look. And it sends us another message that we need people's approval. And we have been so conditioned to believe that we are under scrutiny all the time because that's what celebrities are exposed to and that's normal. And the media have made millions from noticing changes to their weight and passing comment, but really in our day-to-day lives no one notices. But because that's what we are surrounded with in our culture, we feel like we are under that same scrutiny. And as well, we're also biologically primed to care about what other people think because we are social creatures, and even the most introverted of us need social interaction. We're not built to be on our own all the time, and it's intrinsic in our nature, and that's can be demonstrated using Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
So it's often displayed as this pyramid with the lowest levels of the pyramid being made up of the most basic needs, and towards the top are the more complex needs. So the needs at the bottom might be things like food, water, sleep, and warmth. And once we've achieved those needs, we then move up to the next level, which are safety and security. And as we progress up this pyramid of needs, our needs become increasingly psychological and social. So soon the need for love and friendship and intimacy becomes important. So at its core, everyone cares about what other people think, but for some it becomes such a driving force, and we actively seek attention or approval, and sometimes in ways that don't benefit us. And there was actually a study done in 2011 that found that people from cultures all over the world reported that social needs were important even when some of those most basic needs hadn't been fulfilled. So it was still taken more of a priority over those more basic needs. So I think it's important to realize that, you know, it's not a bad thing to want to be liked, and it's clearly an inbuilt trait in us. But if we give it too much energy to the point where we're only living to impress or satisfy others, then that's when we need to address it and why it can be such a problem for us.
Mm. It's really interesting, and you're exactly right. You know, we grow up from kids just wanting to, you know, we're shown to get validation from teachers, from parents, from you know, friends, and to fit in at school. You know, that's something that you mentioned at the top of the conversation about your experiences in school, the kind of wanting to fit in, which is hugely important for everyone growing up. So what are your thoughts around? So I guess everyone is born, obviously, and goes through that process early on. What do you think are the kind of the tipping points where some people go off into one route whereby they are more worried about other people think, more, they're more self-conscious, and others maybe don't go off in that sort of. Is it kind of just a mix of biology and circumstance, or is there usually sort of a point where people kind of veer off? What are your thoughts around that?
I think a lot of it is a mixture of both. So a lot of it is in maybe how we are. So for example, with introverted people, they would be more inclined to kind of sit back and reflect and really kind of go over what's happened and take those messages, whereas extroverted people won't necessarily do those things. So I think that plays a part in it as well. But I think it's kind of the opportunities that are around you. So if you are someone who has been kind of made to feel unworthy, and you've had that experience, being able to have a support network where you can talk about that and kind of get support can be a huge factor in that. And from my own personal experience, I did have a really good support network, but for me, because I was an introverted person, I held it in and I kept it away and I didn't talk about it. So I think for everyone, it's very different on what they have around them and how they can deal with it, and which direction it can go. Because for some people, those experiences probably won't really affect them that much and they can deal with it and move on. But I think it comes back to kind of how we process it ourselves and what's around us and the influences and how much we are exposed to those conditions or their expectations that are around us as well.
And I guess it's worth mentioning as well that it's, we're only as good as the tools that we have at any time in our lives. So if we've had those experiences as a child through school, not everyone had access to a therapist or people that they could talk to, or, if they were thinking that they were felt a little bit different to others, they might not felt that they could do that. So I'm guessing that that's why many people kind of hold on to that, because if they haven't got an outlet as they're growing up, it just becomes a perpetual thing whereby they're just building stuff up until the point where they're adult, and they have more realization about the world and kind of what's available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. It's the things that we have around us to help us have a huge effect. And if you don't have those tools around you from a young age, then you hold on to it. And I think as well, we almost don't want to project that onto anyone else. We can sometimes feel like we're being a burden if we talk about those things. And especially as children, we might not necessarily understand what's going on, that these things necessarily will contribute to how we feel about ourselves in the future, and that we will hold on to them. And it's not until we look back and we think, oh, actually, yeah, that's why I feel like this, and that experience has made me see this. So I think as children, we can be a little bit naive to the experiences that we have, and we don't necessarily process them fully. So then when we get to an older age, and we have this ability to kind of look back and see, that's when we start to think, oh yeah, that makes so much sense now, and this is why. So yeah, the tools we have are so important, but also it probably will be when we're a bit older that we start to have these realizations.
And I know there'll be a lot of people listening to this, and they'll be thinking, yeah, I can really resonate with times where I felt that, or in the past where I felt that. But they kind of say, well, I have these thoughts or I have these feelings, but it's really hard to kind of shake off and move our sort of mind in a different direction, because once you kind of get into some of this kind of mindset and some of this kind of thinking, it's kind of like a downward spiral. A lot of the time you just kind of find more evidence, I guess, to back it up. I guess with the people that you've worked with, why, in your experience, what have you found? Why is it so hard to kind of shake some of these thoughts off sometimes? Because when we speak about kind of managing some of this stuff, we can talk about meditation, or we could talk about mindfulness and ways in which we can, help to manage this on a daily basis. But in the first instance, it is challenging if you haven't gone through some of this stuff before. So in your opinion, why is it so hard to kind of shake some of this stuff off when we're in that moment trying to deal with it?
Yeah, so as I said, it's because we have this inbuilt desire to form relationships, and we've essentially been conditioned to make what other people think a priority. It can be so incredibly hard to undo that conditioning, and when we try and change our thought patterns, I always like to describe it as trying to learn a new language. So you're trying to think in a new way, and that will take time and practice. So, for example, if you were going to start learning German or Japanese or French, you wouldn't expect people to do it fluently within a week or two. So you need to practice and learn and take action and actually use those tools. And eventually you'd be able to do it with practice. And you can also do the same with worrying about what other people think and your thoughts around that by practice and action. So it's not going to be something that will change overnight, but we need to take time and keep practice and action. So it can feel really hard initially because you might feel so determined and think, no, this is it. I'm going to do it this time. I'm not going to worry. But it's difficult because you are unlearning years and years of thoughts and conditioning that have built up for so long. So it's just about keeping that practice and that action, keeping it going even when it gets tough. And it can also be really hard if you're in a different place to your family and friends. So if you're ready to break free from that thinking and start living life on your terms, it can be really hard to do that when the people around you are still in that old mindset that you had. And it's so easy to get sucked back into that world, especially when you're just on the cusp of getting out of it as well. And we're creatures of habit, and we're so comfortable with what we know. And it's important to recognize that this is just your fear showing up and trying to keep you where it knows you best. So when we feel that resistance to change, we think, oh, it's too hard. That's just our fear around this new discomfort and new place that we're going to. And when we're trying to shake it off, I always try and compare it to a scene in Mean Girls. So bear with me, it's going somewhere. So it's the scene where Regina and Gretchen and Karen they're standing in front of a mirror and they're saying what they hate about themselves. And Katie, who is totally new to that side of culture, hasn't been a part of this before, joins in because she thinks that's what she has to do, and that's what the environment is calling her to do. So we can hold ourselves in that space because it's easier than facing the criticism of others and going against what other people are doing. So when you begin your journey to self-development and happiness, you can often be on the receiving end of comments from other people who aren't doing the work that you are, or just don't see the value in it. So therefore, you might give up and struggle to believe that things will change for you. But rather than trying to control their reaction, try and see it as a chance to grow even further and maybe seek out friendships or support from people who are on the same path.
That's a really great point, because I think a lot of people, when so much of this stuff is kind of maybe learned behavior from the environment that you've grown up in, and maybe that you're starting to do some work and you're gaining momentum, but then maybe the people that you live with at home, your family, your partner, someone maybe hasn't been on that part of their journey as yet, so they don't understand it so much. That can be quite challenging to kind of work through some of that stuff as well, because I'm guessing for a lot of people it can feel like I'm making some progress, but I'm still being held back a little bit by the environment I'm in. For those people that are in that circumstance, is it just kind of just keeping your focus and maybe listen to things like podcasts and books and that kind of stuff? Is it just about feeding your mind with as much positive energy and thoughts as you can, so it kind of deafens out some of the other stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that can be incredibly challenging when the people around you aren't supporting the things that you're doing or maybe questioning it. So yeah, I think keep coming back to why it is that you're doing these things and why it is you're making this change, because it is so easy to just think, oh, but it's really hard and they're not accepting it, so I'm just going to give up. But if you just keep kind of coming back and touching in with why you're doing these changes, why you felt that you needed to make these changes, and just keeping that at the forefront of your mind, that when things are difficult, this is why I'm doing it. And yeah, absolutely, podcasts, meditations, books, even trying to find like groups on Facebook are really helpful, or people on social media that promote the things that you're doing can be really helpful, because it gives you that reassurance that actually you are doing the right thing. And it might feel difficult, but it is worth it, and it is worth to kind of keep pushing through that challenge.
And is it a concern for the people that you work with, whereby they're working through some of this stuff, and maybe they haven't got supportive people around them? Is it a fear or worry to them that maybe if they progress in a different direction, those people may not. It goes back to the title of this conversation again. Are they worried about what they will think about them, and the fact that they will then grow apart from those people? Is that a concern to people as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been quite lucky with the women that I've worked with, or sorry, the women that I've worked with have been quite lucky that the people around them have been quite supportive and can see the benefit of them doing this in their work and want them to be happy. But for a lot of people, it can be really difficult. And again, yeah, it comes back to, well, if I do all this inner work, are they going to judge me now because they think that I think I'm better than them? But like the title says, it's none of your business really what anyone else thinks, and we can become so consumed with ourselves and what people are thinking about us that we have to remember that actually people probably aren't thinking about us as much as we think they are. And really, it's none of our business what they think about us, because that's their business. That's for them to decide. And if they do change how they think about us, well, that's another opportunity for us to grow and see that maybe these people weren't the people that we should be having in our lives. And that can be really difficult if it's family, but it's important that you have the people around you that will help you grow rather than hold you in a negative space.
And I guess also it's just realizing that, it's not your responsibility to take everyone with you. You need to do what you need to do for yourself. And generally I've found that, if you can go off and make positive steps in a new direction, once people see that, there is another option sometimes and another way of being, that often they may even follow suit. They may even start to ask you about, oh, what did you do? And so it may be that you are, in a roundabout way leading them, but it's not your responsibility to lead them yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really great quote actually, and it's first they'll ask you why you're doing it, and then they'll ask you how you've done it. And it's so true, that people will question, because it's different. They're not used to this side of you. The people, like I've said, we like comfort, we like familiarity, and people will question, well, why are you doing that? Things are okay as they were. But then when they see the positive effects that it's having for you, then they'll start to think, oh, maybe I would like that too. And you can essentially lead them and be a leader and stand up and show them the positive things that they could experience. But like you said, it's none of our responsibilities to make anyone else do that. We have to be responsible for our own actions and not rely on anyone else to do that work for us.
And also, it's okay to move on to different friendship groups and different colleague groups in, all these kinds of things, because I think we worry that, we may lose some of these relationships, but at the end of the day, if they're not serving us in the way that we need to, I think you'd agree that once you start moving in a different direction, you will create new groups, you will create new sets of friends, just because of the nature of how you're putting yourself out into the world. Will be more fruitful for your relationships. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there is that fear of, but I don't want to lose my friends. I want to stay. I want to stay in this friendship group. But like I said, if it's not serving you, what is it actually doing for you? What value is that friendship group bringing you? Is it just that you have people, or is it that there's something else there? If it's not bringing you something positive, what are you gaining from that friendship? And it can be really scary to step back from that and think that you need to move away from those friendship groups, especially if it's friends you've had for a long time. But equally, is it serving anybody in that friendship group if you are just staying there because you feel that you should? Is it good for them as well if you're just staying there out of kind of comfort, and that's what but actually, when you push yourself to make new friends and find people that are on your wavelength and of a similar motivation to you, it can just completely change your world. And I was absolutely terrified of this when I started changing things in my life, and I was so scared that I would lose friends, and that I would kind of be on my own, that I wouldn't find people that would be similar to me. But actually, my life is almost like a complete 180 now, and I'm surrounded by people that get me and understand me and appreciate who I am as myself. They don't expect me to be anybody else, and it's only brought positives. But that can be quite scary when you first start doing this work. But it's just reminding yourself that you deserve to have people in your life that appreciate and value you, and that will not judge you for the things that you do, and that want to raise you up and lift you up in life.
And I think what you've said there is a great way of kind of reframing it. So, in fact, it's an act of kindness in a way, because, you appreciate that you are now moving on as a different person. So, no one's going to get any benefit of that old situation, that old friendship, because you're not going to show up in the same way that maybe you have done in the past. So you can't best support that person. So, it's just that letting go that's tricky, isn't it?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I think letting go of a lot of things is it's that change. It's that fear of the unknown. But just by taking that first step and embracing it can just open up a whole new world for people.
Yeah. In the experiences you've had, either with yourself and kind of working with clients, how do you what are your thoughts around how some of this stuff kind of affects, maybe if we think about business, or maybe maybe let's take the lockdown situation at the moment. So at the moment,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that are in business, at work. It's an uncertain time for a lot of people. For many people listening to this podcast who do have businesses, or kind of entrepreneurs and that kind of stuff, this time, if anything, has given them time to reflect on what they're doing, maybe what they're doing up until now. Maybe that's then changed, they want to go off in a different direction. Maybe the situation has forced them into maybe looking at different options for their lives going forward. And so never has there been more a time where we need to show up differently, perhaps,
Mhm.
in the stuff that we're doing. But as part of that, we've got all these thoughts around, oh, but what if so and so who I used to work with, what are they going to think about what I'm doing now? Can I do this? That person's been doing this for a lot longer than me. What are they going to think about it? What's my family going to think? If I'm maybe moving from one job to another job. Thinking like this, obviously from our conversation, we know it's not the healthiest thing to do. But
Mm.
um, what do you think the effects on some of this stuff will have for business going forward if we just settle and keep kind of encouraging this kind of way of thinking, do you think?
I think the biggest effect is that it's just people are just going to be miserable. They're just
Mm,
not going to be happy. And you have to think, like, life is short. Like, life isn't long. It's not going to last forever. And do we really want to waste life being unhappy and staying somewhere just because of what someone else might think? And something that I talk to my clients about all the time is, how do you know that they're thinking those things? Like, how are you completely sure that they are thinking those things? And every single time they'll say, oh, well, I don't know that they actually think those things. So we are making assumptions about what other people think of us, when actually they probably aren't even thinking about it anyway.
mm,
And I see it time and time and again for the women that I work with, that they have these big dreams for their careers or for their businesses, but they'll stop themselves because they assume what other people are going to think. And I hear them describe their passions, and just from talking to them, I can hear how much they want it.
mm,
But what people think of them is just like a huge barrier in the middle of the road that they can't get around. So they avoid going for promotion or changing careers or even starting a business that they've dreamt about for years. So they just carry on hiding that side of them and go into a job they dislike or avoid opportunities because it's safe. And they know this well, and it's unlikely anyone's going to question them if they just keep doing what they've been doing. But the problem is that these people they worry about aren't the ones who have to deal with the end result. So when people give you their suggestions or opinions, really there's no risk for them. They don't have to
yeah.
live with the choices that you make, but you do.
Mm,
So it's just reminding yourself that actually no one else has to live with the choices that I'm making, really, apart from me. And by stopping ourselves because of assumptions that we're making, we are really holding ourselves back from achieving all these wonderful things that we could get to.
mm. And I think that's a great point. I think an important thing to remember is that the people that you're worried about, and maybe worried about their opinion, they've got their own shit going on as well. So
Yeah.
so so who- it's almost, it's funny, isn't it? It's almost a selfish thing to think that someone else is consumed with what you're doing.
Mm.
It's kind of like, you know what right have I got to think that they're thinking about me all the time?
Yeah.
It's a
And when
really
I say that to my clients, I think, and they say to them, maybe do you feel like maybe you're being a bit big headed here by thinking all these people
mm,
are thinking all this stuff about you? do you think that you're the center of their world all the time, and think, oh, actually, no, I'm really not? Because when we think about ourselves, how often do we think of like every single person in our lives all the time?
Mm.
We don't do that. So we need to kind of take away that kind of ego that people are going to be thinking the same about us.
It's funny when you think about it like that, isn't it? And I think the more that
Mm.
you can kind of reframe some of this stuff and think about it from a different perception, a different point of view, it just gives more evidence to the fact that, you know, probably what you're thinking there isn't much evidence to hold it up, really, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's it. It comes. We have to kind of start breaking down and separating from facts and what we believe is true, the stories that we tell ourselves, and that can be one of the most powerful things that you can do, is to actually sit down and assess, well, is this true, or am I just making this up in my head and making myself believe this?
Mm. I'm guessing when you start to work with people, maybe you have a consultation or something with them, and you're having a chat. I'm guessing there's kind of lots of kind of myths we tell ourselves around why we can't kind of move forward in some of this stuff. You know, if we're thinking about what other people think, probably, you know, you've spoken before about how it all boils down to kind of certain beliefs around us, our own selves, and kind of what we think about ourselves. Are there anything that often comes up when, you know, myths we tell ourselves around, maybe I'm not that interesting, or I'm not like that person who does that over there? What are some of the things that sort of come up often when you kind of have chats with people?
Oh, there are so many myths that we tell ourselves, and
Mm.
you can also call them limiting beliefs. So these are
Mm.
the thoughts that we believe to be true that kind of hold us back and limit us and bring us these negative feelings. Um, the most common ones I hear are either based on their confidence or their own self-esteem, or what they have to offer compared to other people.
Yeah.
So it can be centered around their experiences or skills. So things like, I'm not smart enough, they're more successful than me, I won't stand out, no one will see my value. Um, or it comes back to that kind of imposter syndrome. If I do this, they'll find out that I don't really know what I'm talking about. So I'll not do it, because then they'll think better of me. Or I don't have enough experience. But it can also relate to how we present ourselves and how we connect with others. So a lot of the women will say, I'm not interested, I'm too boring, I'm not
Mm.
attractive enough, I'm too fat, or I'm too skinny, I don't have the right look. And these myths can essentially cling to any part of our life. So we can worry about what people think for absolutely anything, and make us believe that we'll be exposed, and it makes us feel very, very vulnerable.
Mm.
And one of the biggest myths, I think, that we is that we will always be this way. This is just the way we are. So I'm just not meant to be successful, or I'm just not the confident type. And it just simply isn't true, because
Mm.
things won't change overnight, but you can get to where you want to be and stop worrying about what other people think. And it's really important to see yourself exactly where you are and avoid comparing where you are to others, because your life experiences have been very different to theirs. So of course you're going to be in different stages, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So these myths, although they come from lots of different places, it's important to kind of come back to you and where are you, and to see you as you are, rather than in comparison to other people.
Mm. And to, you know, for people listening as well, and to give some kind of something, you know, I love to give kind of tangible things that people can kind of take away. And
Hmm.
so if someone's kind of experiencing, you know, this kind of stuff, maybe I don't know, maybe they want to put themselves out more online, maybe through Instagram or something like that. And maybe, you know, they have certain thoughts that come and go, and that's maybe stops them from kind of posting something. Maybe they've created something that's really great and they're really happy about it. And they think it's going to be really benefit their audience or their clients. And then just about when they're about to go to it, that little um, that voice on their shoulder starts going and
Mm.
saying, "What about so and so? What are they going to think about that?" What is something that we can do in that kind of moment to kind of separate ourselves from that? Because I think that'd be really helpful to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of got kind of 4 tips here that might help with that. So
Mm.
um the first thing is, we've touched on, is that to remind yourself that people don't actually care as much as we think they do.
Mm.
So people generally don't think outside of themselves a great deal of the time. And it's quite sad, but it's actually true that the average person will just filter their world through their own ego, meaning that they'll think about things in terms of me or my. So that means that unless who you are or what you've done directly affects another person, they're actually unlikely to spend that much time thinking about you at all. which can sound quite sad, but it's in a good way that, they obviously think about you in a caring way, but not that you don't take up loads of space in their mind where they are judging you all the time. So it's just, the first step would be just to just remind yourself that actually, no, they're not thinking about me as much as I think they do. The second tip would be to really challenge your thoughts. So when we worry about what other people think, we have this habit of catastrophizing. So we find the worst thing that can happen, and this is usually extremely exaggerated. So we get the worst possible scenario and that we can even possibly come up with. So what I do is to get my clients to think factually about what is the worst thing that would happen. So realistically, what is the worst thing that will happen if they do whatever it is they want to do or say what they want to say? And every time they come back with an outcome that isn't actually that bad at all. So we need to separate the facts from what our assumptions are and recognize that we're telling ourselves a story. So break it down into, this is what I'm thinking, what do I know to be true, and what do I know to be false? And that really helps kind of break down those thoughts and challenge them. Another tip is to get rid of anything that will bring you negativity. So I know we've touched on friendship groups and things. So a lot of the time we can worry about what people think just because of who those people are. So a good way to determine if this is someone whose opinion you should be concerned with is to ask yourself, if you wouldn't go to them for advice, why do you trust their opinion? So stop engaging with them in ways that bring you negativity. So if you wouldn't go to them for advice and listen to what they say and really give value to what their advice would be, why are you so concerned about their opinion?
No, that's huge. That's huge, isn't it? Because
yeah,
I think when
absolutely.
you stop and just pause around that, I think, if it's not someone, would you go to them for advice? And if you wouldn't, why are you bothered? Right, sorry, I just want to interject, but carry on.
No, I'm glad it is such a simple question, but it just really makes you think, actually, why would I go to them? And if someone is going to judge you on, how you look or how you come across, without actually getting to know you as a person, then really it tells you more about them than it does about you.
And also, if you think they would have that response anyway, what is the point in worrying or being associated with that person anyway?
Exactly. Why would you want to live your life with them anyway and be associated with them if that's the reaction they're going to give you?
I think there's going to be a lot of people having light bulb moments right now as they're pulling over the car and think, oh yeah. I'm so sorry.
Carry on. A list now of people that I'm not going to you for advice, so you don't matter anymore.
Okay, Zoe, sorry.
No, you're fine. So my last tip for that would be then to it kind of comes back to this again. Just accept that not everyone's going to like you. And this was a huge learning curve for me. And I know for a lot of my clients that I really wanted everyone to like me all the time. And I hated the thought that someone might dislike me or might judge me negatively. But we have to remember that it is absolutely impossible for everyone to like us. And no matter what we do, we cannot please everyone. And it would be a complete waste of our energy and our lives to chase that illusion. And an example would be, so for every person who says tea is their favorite drink, there's going to be someone else who says that coffee is. So the world is made up of contrasts, and we just need to accept that we will not be for everyone, and not everyone will agree with what we do or what we say. And a really, really good example of that is Beyonce. So she is one of the most talented performers in the world who does so many incredible things, but yet there are still people who don't like her and don't like her music and don't agree with the things that she does. But that doesn't stop her from showing up and doing what she loves, because she knows that the people who matter appreciate her and she is comfortable with who she is.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And especially, if we're talking about business as well, it's good to niche down a bit, and I think initially when people maybe start businesses, they think they have to serve everyone. So they're frantically accepting maybe jobs and things they don't want to do. And because they want to get crack with a lot of stuff. But over a period of time, I think you realize that the clients that are maybe a good fit for you, who have the rapport, who maybe connect best with your personality, are generally the ones that you enjoy working with most, are the ones that have the best benefits, that they become raving fans about what you're doing, whereby some others that aren't a good fit, it's okay to say you may not be a good fit for me as a client, and I think that's a kind thing to do, because maybe you've got a colleague who is a good fit and you can give them some work, or it's putting everyone in the best position to get the best outcome, I think.
Absolutely, definitely. And I really do. I think it was like you've said, like with businesses, you can't be for everyone. And one that I really love is Marmite. They have
Mhm.
marketed themselves on people actually hating them. Like
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
they've built their brand on. So
yeah.
they know that people are going to hate them, and they've said, well, okay, come and hate us. That's fine.
Mm.
And I think that's a really, really good example of, knowing who it is that you want to serve and knowing who it is that will appreciate what it is you're putting out there. And there's going to be people that don't like you, but you know what? That's fine, because for everyone that doesn't, there's probably going to be somebody else that does.
Mm. And that's okay. I think that's the main thing. But yeah, it's
Absolutely.
okay. It's okay to do that. And it takes a little
Hmm.
bit of work, like you say, to kind of work through it at the beginning. But I think once you kind of acknowledge it and have those kind of light bulb moments, like we've just spoken about, everything just becomes a bit more clearer, I think. And you start to see,
Mm.
oh yeah. And then when you're in that better mindset, you can then focus your efforts on where you want to go, regardless of wasting time. Because I think you'd agree, thinking about some of this stuff is just a waste of time.
Oh, absolutely. Like that energy could be used in so many more amazing places and kind of pushing you to the heights that you want to be with. If you, all those minutes and hours of each day that you spend worrying about people, imagine if you could use that to kind of get your business where you want it to be, or to get your life where you want it to be. Like how much further on you could be if you didn't have all that time wasted and energy
Mm.
wasted on worrying about what people think.
Mm. I know one of the things we've spoken about as well is kind of putting yourself in the best kind of environment. So whereby that's kind of holistic things, maybe it's kind of meditation or taking time out for yourself. Are there any particular things that you advise to maybe your clients around general things they can do day to day that doesn't necessarily stop this particular thing, but just generally puts you in a better space to work on some of this stuff?
Yeah, I think meditation is a great one. Um, and because it just lets you quieten what's going on in your head. And for a
Mm.
lot of people, it's that kind of, those thoughts are kind of always going, and it's really hard to shut that off. Whereas when you take the time to meditate and do those kind of things, it shuts that voice off a little bit and gives you that clarity on what it is that you need to focus on, and where it is that you need a bit more silence, where you need to work on, and shut out those voices. So that's a really good thing. And journaling as well is something I recommend to a lot of my clients. That it can feel a bit strange to start journaling because you feel like you're back in high school keeping a diary. Um, but if you can find some really good journal prompts, that center around
Mm.
what it is that you want and what it is that you want to achieve out of life, it can be really helpful and really help you process those thoughts. And it can also give you a chance to draw a line under it as well. So you
Yeah.
get them out on paper, it takes it out of your head, you can move on and focus your energy somewhere else as well, which is so, so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I found that myself in the past. I think there's so much weight to carry around if it's all just bubbling around in your head. Maybe it's just ideas, maybe it's not negative thoughts, maybe just ideas. But then if you take the time to take a step back with a pen and paper and a coffee and just kind of get some of this stuff out, I think this just seems to be a bit of a release there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you kind of, you getting it out, so you're freeing up that space, and it does take that weight off, because you're not having to remember then all of these things that are in your head. You've got them down now. You've got, a physical record of what it is that you're thinking about, so you can free up that space now in your mind to think about something else that's more important.
Hmm. For a lot of people will be listening to this and they'll, be resonating with them, and they'll kind of think, well, they'll be looking at ways in which they can kind of work on some of this stuff. And maybe, they've got people around them, but maybe they're not maybe in the right space and they need some kind of help around some of this stuff. And, and from the conversation, maybe, a coach is something that they haven't come across before, in this field, and it's enticing to them. Um, if someone's looking for someone to work with, what would your advice be for what to look out for when looking for a coach? So,
I think this is so important. So I'm a huge, huge believer in the importance of connection and having a really strong relationship with coaching client, where the clients feel safe to open up and be vulnerable, especially, with their coach. And I think that's a massive factor that you need to consider. So if someone was looking for a coach, the first thing I would suggest them would be, think about what it is you want to be coached on, whether it's well-being, confidence, mindset, career, anything else that you feel there's a disconnect from. And the reason it is so important to get clear on that is because a lot of coaches will specialize in a particular area of coaching where they feel their expertise can best serve their clients.
yeah.
And I think it's really valuable to find someone with the right skills or even the right experience to move you forward. And then from there, once you think you've niched down and you find what area it is you want to work on, then have a look at coaches, maybe follow them on their social media, have a look on their website so you can get a feel for who they are and if their style is right for you, because it does vary from coach to coach. So for example, I would say I'm more of like a nurturing coach, whereas other coaches might be more direct and give tough love. And both styles are great, but you need to think about which style would suit you best and make you most comfortable and get the most from you. And then I would suggest reading their testimonials. So see if their past clients have achieved the things that you want to achieve. And with coaching, it's really important to remember that not everyone's results are going to be the same, because ultimately it does come down to you and your motivation and where you are. But it's really good to see if other people have gotten the results that you want, so you can tell if that coach is the right person for you to get you to where you want to be. And then from there, I would suggest reaching out to whoever it is you feel called to, and either have a discussion with them by messaging or email, or even better by phone. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of test the water, see if they really are, or how they come across online. And it's a really good chance to see if it actually feels good for you. So when I do this with my clients, it's usually just a 15-minute call so I can find out more about them, and vice versa, they can find out more about me. And it also lets me see if I'm the right person for them. And I think it's so vital that as a coach, we recognize when maybe we aren't the right person to support someone, and we can say, actually, do you know what, I think this other person might be better for you, or I don't think I can get you to where you want to be. So it's really important as a client, you know who they are and what they're like, but as a coach, we have a responsibility to step up and say when we don't think we're right either.
Yeah. And for people that haven't worked with a coach before, Zoe, how does it kind of work? Is it kind of like a one-to-one, or is it on a group basis, or how do you kind of run things?
So I do mine one-to-one, so I don't do group packages yet. But it's either a 3-month package, or I do one-off sessions as well. So with my coaching, what I tend to do is if someone reaches out to me and expresses interest, and we've had a little chat about which package might be best for them. So for example, the 3-month package would be more suitable for someone who's got deeper work they want to work through, or maybe more progress that they would like to make, or more hurdles that they kind of want to push through. Whereas the one-off sessions are more for someone who maybe wants a bit of focus, or just needs a little bit of a boost of motivation, or kind of a bit of direction to kind of move them forward a bit more, but are happy to kind of carry on themselves. And then from there, it would follow a similar structure with a 3-month series. So I'd send them a questionnaire which has thought-provoking questions that kind of spark that deeper thinking. And it's actually amazing how many women have said that just by doing the questionnaire alone brings them so much clarity in what they want, because they're really forced to sit down and think about what's going on for them. And then from there, we would book in a consultation call, and that's usually done for 2 reasons. So the first is that it gives me a chance to go a bit deeper into what that person has said in the questionnaire and clarify anything that I'm unclear on, and so I can really understand who they are. And secondly, it allows you to see if coaching is right for you, and if you still feel good about going ahead. And at this point, the client still has full control whether they want to continue, so they're still under no obligation at this point to say whether or not they want to carry on. And then if they decide that that's what they want, we would book at our first call. And the first call is really goal orientated, so spend most of the time to set 1 to 3 goals based on the areas they want. And I'm a heart-centered coach, so I really focus on what it is you want to feel by the end of our time together, and use this to inform those goals. And then once they're set, we can set actions to kind of get the series moving that you'll complete over 2 weeks before our next call. And then we have a call every 2 weeks, and then review our actions and set some new ones to kind of keep that momentum going. And then between calls, they have access to me either via email or WhatsApp. And then I also make a lot of resources for my clients. So I spend a lot of time in them because I really want them to get as much value as they can. So if I think there's something else that they'll need between our calls, I'll kind of make one up and get it sent out to them and pass those on. So between calls, clients have so much access to me between sessions as well, because that time can be just as important as the sessions themselves as well.
It's interesting what you say from, even that first questionnaire that they complete, that they get so much value out of that. I think it just comes down to, we get so consumed in some of this stuff. We just don't give ourselves the opportunity to take a step back and get some of this out.
Yeah, and like we said with the journal, it can be that release of getting it all out and really processing what is going on for us. It can be such a release to let it all out.
Mm. You know, the name of this podcast is Make Today Count, and the reason being is that, you know, my goal was for people to get engaged in new conversations around stuff maybe they're having challenges with, or maybe new directions that they wanted to go in, and that they were able to take away and have something tangible to take away. And we've spoken about those great 4 points that you mentioned before. But if someone thought, you know, this is it, I really want to start working on some of this stuff, and tomorrow I'm going to take one small step. So I'm going to have to make you choose now, Zoe, between maybe one of the four that we've spoken about before. You know, just as, because we all know that if we do too much too early, then usually it just kind of falls apart. So what would you encourage people to do if they've found themselves overly consumed about what other people think, and it maybe they acknowledge that it's stopping them from doing a lot in their lives and their business? What would be the one thing that they could do tomorrow to get them on their way?
I think the one thing that I would recommend to everyone to do if this is something they were struggling with is, I think the most important thing that you can do is to really get to know what your values are. And once you know what you stand for, you know what you like, what you dislike, and what you're willing to accept, it makes it so much easier to put those first. So my tip would be to take time to get to know yourself, because you've probably spent so long trying to live up to other people's expectations that you've lost that connection to who you are and what you want. So don't be afraid to explore and question yourself on what it is that you normally think. And by not basing your values on what other people want or expect, your growth is going to be easier and enjoyable because you're doing things because you want to and because they're important to you. So my biggest tip would be just take the time to get to know yourself and sit down tomorrow and think about what your values are in all the different areas of your life and what it is that you want.
Perfect. So Zoe, all the stuff you've got going on at the moment, with clients and so forth, anything you've got coming up that's exciting? I know you've got a group that you run as well.
Yeah, so that's actually really good timing because the group only launched last month. So it's a virtual space over on Facebook called the Hideout, and it's where introverted women can come together to share and connect and just really celebrate who they are whilst building their confidence and self-esteem. And it's already such a beautiful space, and the women in there are just so wonderful, and it's been so lovely to hear the feedback that it's been great for them to have somewhere where they feel understood. So if anyone listening is interested, it would be lovely to have them to come and join us, because it is a beautiful space.
Yeah.
And I've also just opened up my books again this month for my coaching packages. So I was fully booked, but now they're open up again. So for one-to-one coaching, that is now open again, which is exciting.
Perfect. And we'll put all those links in the show notes. So if a lot of this stuff is resonating with you and you want to get in touch with Zoe, you can do so via those links. Where's the best place to kind of connect with you, Zoe? Is it on via the website or Instagram or?
Yeah, Instagram would be the best. So my handle is @she.is.coaching, and that would be the best place to get in touch.
Perfect. I love to end the show on gratitude. So I just want to say thank you, Zoe. It's been a joy speaking to you today, and I'm really grateful that we've been able to connect just via that one post that kind of resonated with me and kind of prompted me to get in touch with you. I can see from the work that you're doing with the ladies that you work with, either in the group or on one-to-one. I can see that you've really used your experiences of the past to really draw that strength and to help others. So that's really admirable. So thank you for all you're doing in the world. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for reaching out, because it really means a lot to have you reach out and to get me on the podcast. So thank you for giving me the space and the time to talk as well. And it's just wonderful, the things that you're doing, and bringing attention to all these things as well is wonderful. So thank you.
No, you're really welcome. Guys, if anything has resonated, which I'm sure it has, we'd love you to get in touch either directly with Zoe or myself. You can find us on Instagram or via the website. Also, if you haven't already done so, we'd love it if you could leave a review. So wherever you're finding your podcast, whether that be Spotify or Apple or wherever, please leave us a review. and let us know. And if you haven't done already, please subscribe. Also, if maybe some of the stuff that we've spoken about today in this episode, maybe you know someone who's maybe going through some of this stuff, maybe you acknowledge that they may need some help, just feel free to send them the link. A small step today may be the change that someone needs in their life on a much wider scale. So, like I got in touch with Zoe today, and this has produced this podcast that you're listening to. Small steps that we can take, we just don't know where they will go, so just lean into these situations and take a chance. And also, if you're looking for a proactive place on the internet where you can join other people that are creating vibrant personal brands, please come over to the Elevate community over on Facebook. We'd love to have you there. But until next time, I've been Ross Dean. This has been Make Today Count. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.